I would be thinking about you as I was recovering.
Yeah, that's what I, that's what
On game controllers. Here, there's app library and widgets on your home screen.
And one thing I found very interesting, and it was a very key point that we talked about throughout the semester, is that most drugs were created as a remedy to another drug. Now, for the audience who may not know, who may not be aware of this, can you explain this process and how most drugs throughout history were created to solve another drug, and then another drug came along to become a remedy to that drug prior?
Well, I'm not sure if I would say that. That's certainly a part of it. Most of the drugs all came about as first they started as medicines.
Okay.
You talked about the opioid addiction that we're going through right now, this big problem with opioids in America. And of course, that was, we've had opium and its byproducts ever since the ancient Greeks and before. And when they started making OxyContin, it was because in the 1980s and 90s, physicians around the world thought that pain was underserved. Like people are in chronic pain, people with terminally ill, diagnoses, they're not going to live. You might as well give them a big dose of morphine or some other opiate, because it doesn't matter if they become addicted. Just make the end of their life more comfortable, right? Mm-hmm. And so then the Sackler company decided to make OxyContin, and other companies doing similar things, as a way to treat chronic pain of people who aren't terminally ill. But they thought with the time release within the OxyContin, people can't become addicted to it. But of course, immediately after they start doing this, people learn how to circumvent that by crushing up the tablets or storing it and doing all sorts of different things that are not prescribed. And it becomes a recreational drug and something that people become addicted to. And this is something that happened to all the drugs, right? Like tobacco comes into Western Europe in the very late 16th century and the early 17th century. And immediately people, are smoking it, and it's really for pleasure. But at the same time, they thought it was a medicine. They thought, oh, this is a powerful medicine. It can help cure people, right? The thing that they thought tobacco was good for the lungs and the head. They thought it would cure cancer. When they talked about the curing cancer, they meant putting the leaves on tumors that were popping out through the skin. And that was supposed to be a good thing. And it would be good for your lungs because it helps you cough up stuff that's inside your lungs. So this is the sort of thing that they thought. And the same things happens with coffee and everything going up through LSD and cocaine and all the different opiates today, that medicine gives them a cover. And of course, they sometimes very, very much so are used as a medicine. And we see that again today with like marijuana becoming medical marijuana. LSD is once again becoming something that people think might help cure anxiety, and opioids and things like that. But you also say that the drugs are chasing each other, right? So Benjamin Rush, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, he was a very prominent Philadelphia physician. He was very much against distilled spirits, right? This is a big, we talked about the gin craze in London in the 1700s. And distilled spirits were new to Europeans. They had beer and wine, but they didn't have such a fast-acting and powerful form of alcohol like gin and rum until the 18th century in mass quantities. It became a big problem. And Rush was very much against distilled spirits. And one thing he thought would be good is like people who are sort of habituated, as he called it, to gin and rum, get them taking opium instead, and this will be good. Right, and we see this throughout all of, like you say, throughout all the drugs history. For example, Bill W., one of the founders of one of the main forces behind Alcoholics Anonymous, he thought that LSD helped him stay sober. So he's taken LSD in the middle of the 20th century as a way to keep off alcohol. And heroin, which was developed in I think the 1890s, it was a cough suppressant, right? This is the time when people had tuberculosis was one of the main killers in advanced societies and Western societies, wealthy societies, I should say. And they're looking for a cough suppressant, also something before aspirin, something that could help relieve pain. And they come up with heroin. And one of the things they thought heroin was good for was it would solve a morphine addiction. Mm-hmm. Now, heroin is really just a more refined version of morphine. So you're just giving people even more morphine than before.
Right.
So they immediately realize that's a terrible idea. But this idea that you brought up, like chasing one drug with another drug, has been an issue throughout the history of drugs.
Exactly. And that's, like I said, it is something like stuck out to me. I was like, that's pretty interesting. Because like you said, I also remember how morphine, it was either morphine was used as a remedy to cocaine. Is that correct?
Probably, yeah.
Or
vice
was it-
versa, I don't know.
vice
Probably
versa, right.
both, yeah.
I remember that, and it was already interesting.